My boyfriend got jealous of my dog and tried to send her to heaven, but he failed and I discovered the truth, so now I'm sending this relationship to hell. Posted by you/as gay as the day Monday. My dog is a little piece of crap. I, 35F, love the booger, but my goodness. Last week, she got out of the backyard while I was busy cooking my boyfriend's dinner for his birthday. My boyfriend, Mike, 40M, let the dog out during this time and didn't stay outside with a dicking prick. When I went to call her back in, she was nowhere to be found. I live in an active city on a busy road, so I was naturally worried about her, but my boyfriend said she should be fine, as we are well known in the neighborhood for our clockwork walks and someone would see her and bring her back. I went out to look for her anyway but couldn't find her. I didn't find her for 48 hours, and I was crying from the stress. She's been my dog for 7 years, and I know it sounds odd to some, but she's my girl, my bestie, and I love the heck out of her. I would sob, worrying she was injured or, worse, lying on the side of the road. My boyfriend said he tried to track the microchip, but for some reason, it wouldn't work. Her leash had a tag on it with her location, but he didn't put it on her because, as he explained, she was just going outside. I have a new neighbor, Josie, 30-ish F, and it turned out she had my dog. She found her, tagless, wandering around her yard 3 doors down from me. She didn't know her or me at all, so she took her to the local vet, who recognized my girl and called me. So my little troublemaker was returned to me. I was overjoyed and thanked Josie profusely, explaining how worried I'd been. My boyfriend audibly sighed from behind me and said, "Well, thank F that's over, she ruined my birthday with that stunt." When Josie saw him, she looked confused but didn't say anything until I walked her out. She told me, "You might not believe me, but he told me last night that you don't have pets." I was confused by this and kind of didn't believe her, but it nagged at me, so I checked our doorbell cam footage. And there it was, clear as day. While I was out looking for my dog, Josie showed him a photo and asked if he knew this dog, and he said no, that we don't have dogs, and even suggested calling animal control. I woke my boyfriend up, as he was asleep by this point on the couch, and questioned him about this. He denied it, saying Josie was just trying to stir up trouble. I have my dog back, so things should go back to normal now. Then he slipped in that he deserves a makeup day for his ruined birthday. When I told him about the footage, I saw him go very still, and then he admitted to it. He said my dog is old, she's 8, and he was trying to spare me, since she'll probably die soon. He claimed he wanted us to focus on the future, not the past, and said my dog represents my past. I told him this made zero sense to me. He saw me practically fall apart worrying about my dog, and now I can't even trust he didn't have more to do with her disappearing. He lost it at that, saying he knew I'd find a way to blame him for this, and shouted, "You love that beach more than you love me." I told him that he's a coward and a beach for lying and not being honest about clearly not liking my dog for the past year. Then I asked him to leave. He stared at me like, "You're really going to kick me out right now over a dog?" And I said, "Absolutely." He cussed at me and went back to his place. I haven't read the texts he's been sending me, but there have been a lot. He's been gone for 7 hours, and I have 27 text notifications from him. He also talked to my brother, Blair, who called me to say I hurt Mike by caring more about an animal than about him and not being able to just shut up, be an adult, and celebrate my boyfriend's birthday. I'm confused because we've been together a bit over a year and I spoil the hell out of him. We even met because of my dog, and he seemed to really adore her this entire time. My brother, though, doesn't like me much these days, so I can't really tell if he's just being a prick, probably. Update 2 days later. After my post, my boyfriend showed up at my door the next day with flowers and dog treats. I didn't let him in but talked through my screen door. He said he'd had time to think, was ashamed of his behavior, and was very sorry. He explained that he has abandonment issues and got scared when a friend put the idea in his head that I love my dog more than him. The friend, it turns out, is my brother, Blair. Blair and I used to be close, but I am bisexual and came out over 5 years ago, and he also came out, but is a hateful bigot. I can't really get into it all because it is a lot, but suffice it to say, our relationship went downhill when his bigotry started to show. I guess that makes me an idiot because when he introduced me to my boyfriend, I should have been suspicious. He was so supportive of us, and my boyfriend was sweet and kind, never had a problem with me, and never got insecure or weird about it. He came with me to Pride events and would post about it on social media. We wore matching rainbow outfits and the works. Now I don't trust it. Anyway, I told him I wasn't ready to deal with him yet, and he asked why not. I explained my perspective, basically what I shared in my last post, and added that he showed up without letting me know he was coming and didn't even let me speak. He just launched into this grand apology. When I said I don't trust him right now, he started crying, the ugly, hysterical kind. He said this all stemmed from his mother leaving the family. From what I know, she walked out on him and his family when he was 13, and that I am his person, he loves me, and just lost his mind a little. It's one mistake, just one, I'm sorry. He kept saying it over and over, and maybe I'm a broken person, but I didn't feel anything in the moment. I watched him crying, apologizing, basically groveling, and I just wasn't having any of it. I told him we need to talk, but I wasn't ready to have that talk right now and needed space. He begged me to let him in and only left when some neighbors came by to ask if everything was okay. He just snapped, told them to F off, and then left. I'm not even sure what I'm doing anymore or what I'll do about him or my brother. Second update 2 weeks later. Hey Reddit, this is long, but I had to fit in a lot. Well, it gets progressively worse. Not an hour after my last post, my phone is ringing off the damn hook. It's my brother Blair, according to my phone screen, and sure, it's his number, but who is it really? My dad, whose number I have blocked for 1,000 reasons. Here are just a few I think are important. Like I mentioned somewhere in my previous posts or comments, my mother died giving birth to me. Blair always low-key blamed me, but my dad blamed me entirely. There's no way around it, he was just straight up abusive. He even named me after my mother and was strict about my appearance, demanding I keep my hair styled like hers, never dye it since I have the same color hair as she did. I don't need glasses, but he gave me frames like hers, you get the picture. He would physically hurt me and tell me it's my fault she died if I even tried to stray from becoming her. For most of that time, I thought this was somewhat normal until I talked about it to others. After that, our relationship grew strained, and I could fill pages with stories of why I'm low contact with him and keep him, Blair, and my eldest brother, Jack, on an information diet. But I know I might be pushing some readers' patience here, so I'll move on. Dad started yelling at me, not unusual, at first about me blocking him. He had been blocked for about a week at that point, and it was temporary. I sometimes have to block him because, every once in a while, he starts to push back on my boundaries or gets downright mean. When I unblock him and reaffirm boundaries, he behaves for a bit. Then he added that now he's hearing I kicked out the nice young man I'm seeing over a small spat and launched into how my mother was never a vengeful woman, she was calm, rational, understanding, etc. He eventually runs out of steam and finally stops, and there's a long pause. Then he says, "Well, what have you got to say for yourself?" And I say nothing, and just hang up. So then Mike shows up again, not long after, y'all, this is the same day he came before, with my dad and Blair. Mike is demanding I let them in. Blair has walked around to my back door and tries to open it. My car is in the garage, so I just keep quiet, stay in the back room with Booger, and listen. They're talking to one another, walking around my house, and eventually start saying I might not be home. They call me several times and send texts from Blair's phone, and after about 10 minutes, they give up and leave. I watch my Ring cam footage, and there's a moment when Mike warns the others about the cam and says he's pretty sure there are cameras around the whole property, which wasn't true at the time, but I guess he was paranoid. They retreated to my dad's car and sat there for a while, then drove off but passed by the house at least twice. I waited about 2 hours, ignoring my phone, packed a bag for me and Booger, and called a close friend, Aria, 35F, who lives a bit north of me, to explain. Booger and I stayed with her for a full week, and during that time, her brother stopped by, got my keys from me, bought and installed more cameras on my property, gathered additional things for me and Booger like medications I had forgotten, and helped me file a police report about the visit. The cameras showed that Dad and Mike came by a total of 4 more times, twice each, and I have phone records proving that, after I messaged all 3 of them to leave me alone for the time being, they refused. Mike demanded via text that we have to talk and that it has to be in person, and my dad separately said the same using Blair's phone. Police appeared on my doorcam saying they were there for a welfare check. I explained through the cam that I was fine but away. One of them said he'd level with me, he's a friend of my dad's, and that my dad is mighty worried about me. He told me, as a father, if my little girl vanished this way, no one could convince me she's okay and taken care of until she's right in front of me, okay and taken care of. Thank God Aria and her brother had insisted I make the report because, despite it not being a crime at the moment and thus not actionable, I was able to explain that a report had already been filed for their trespassing. I also now had further footage of them continuing to do so, and I expressed my fear for my safety and that of my pet. I asked how I could press charges for harassment, and while the cop didn't say directly that I shouldn't, he danced around it, saying I'd probably have to do that in person. Then he asked where I was earlier. I stopped responding and called the police department directly to make another report. I guess it's a freaking mystery how Dad found out I wanted to press charges, because he sent me a long text about how disappointed he is in me and how I am a monster, hateful, and broken for trying to punish him for being a loving father worried about his only daughter. I am not his only daughter, but he disowned my half-sister. Long story. He added that he's now lightheaded, sometimes dizzy, feeling faint, and thinks it's all the stress from this. Maybe it's time for me to reunite with your mother. I've missed her, I'm so tired, he continued with a long rant about how depressed he is. Unsurprisingly, Blair's next set of texts shifted in tone from the former "how dare yous" to short and vague messages like, "Look, I know you're mad at me right now, but please reach out. I'm worried about Dad, and Dad is staying with me. I think he's sick, but he won't go to the doctor," imploring me to call him because he will listen to you, along with updates on Dad's on and off hunger strike. But the one I fell for makes me feel like the biggest chump of the century. I had just gotten back to the house and had ignored 3 consecutive calls from Blair. He left 3 voicemails. 1. Dad is acting strange and I'm worried. Please call. 2. Can you please text Dad to let me take him to the doctor? He's refusing, and he hasn't eaten in nearly a week. And 3. Dad has collapsed. The ambulance is taking us to the hospital, and I don't know which one yet, followed by a text saying, Dad doesn't have long, they're saying, so please come quickly. So my dumbass responds to that, asking which hospital, and he says he's waiting at a restaurant next door to the hospital nearest my home. I know it was next level stupid, but I was in panic mode. He's my only living parent. He's a monster, a bigot, a narcissistic son of a bitch, but he's my dad, the only one I've got, and I couldn't fathom Blair lying about something like this. He told me to meet him at the restaurant because we needed a game plan but to hurry so we could get back to Dad. I called Arya, hysterical, telling her my dad might be dying and everything that had happened. Arya listened and then said something like, "Listen to me, stop for a minute. If it were my dad, I wouldn't be at a freaking restaurant, I'd be glued to his side. If the staff wouldn't allow it, I'd be camped out in the waiting room." She made it clear that no one in that situation would be somewhere else when a loved one had moments to live. I felt stupid, but she was right. I called the hospital, and no one by my surname, it's a unique one, had been brought in. When Blair texted again, I lied and said I was at the front desk asking where Dad was. He got mad, saying, "Why would you go there without talking to me?" I asked him to tell me the truth, is Dad there or not, and he hung up on me. Dad soon texted, "Well, I see now that you don't care about us at all, good to know." I replied, but it came back as undeliverable. He had blocked me. I tried calling Blair back. He also blocked me. Over the next 2 days, I realized they had blocked me on almost everything. Then, on the second day, Mike texted, asking if I was ready to talk. I said sure, and he suggested the same restaurant, and it was like this oh moment. I suggested we just have a call, but he insisted it had to be in person and asked me to be mature about it since we're adults. So I replied, okay, adult to adult, were you with Blair there? He took an hour to reply, and in that time, I threw in another fib. I said, I want to give you a chance to tell me the truth because I was there, so give me your answer. When he replied, he said it was an intervention. According to him, I'd been mentally unstable for a while now, and, apparently without me knowing, I'm an alcoholic. He drinks more frequently than I do. I usually only drink wine socially, while he has whiskey every night. He said he'd been talking to Blair and eventually my dad about it, so they wanted to sit me down and support me. He then said he needed to move in full time to help me through this and more. I didn't even argue with him. I replied that there is footage and phone records of harassment, and that lying about my dad dying was honestly so low it was only slightly less ludicrous than this half-baked fiction he, and likely my dad and brother, came up with to gaslight me. I told him we're over, and to stay away from me, my home, and Booger forever. Then I blocked him. I know that was long, but honestly, I cut out a lot, and I'm sorry it's not a more empowering breakup story where I saw through the BS and ended things in a dignified, clean way. Now I'm mentally focused on putting my house on the market so I can move. Arya has cleared out her home office/guest room of work stuff so Booger and I can stay with her until I find a new place, and I'm dealing with trying to get restraining orders, which is harder than I expected. Oh, and Booger is good. She loves Arya's place and her 2 dogs and cat. Plus, the neighborhood has far more children who are outside a lot since school hasn't started yet here. She sits out front with me, Arya, or Arya's partner and gets non-stop pets. She's in heaven, lol. Third update 3 weeks later. I don't really want to get into it, but I kinda need to vent, and some of you, most of you, have been really helpful, insightful, and kind. Mike has been pushing the narrative that I'm mentally ill. He knows I suffer from depression and PTSD, and for whatever reason, he's now claiming I was/am a misdiagnosed schizophrenic. It was relentless, and Blair and Dad have been backing him. I finally reached a breaking point and hired a lawyer. After cease and desist letters and 1 restraining order, my father is a complete psycho. Long story, Mike showed up at my doorstep. He's now demanding that Booger is his dog too, saying he has rights to her and that he's worried about her safety with such a mentally unstable parent, me, it seems. So I told him that I now have footage, again, of him being the unstable one and that his bizarre, manipulative threats, along with video of him claiming he doesn't even have a pet, would debunk his case. I'm not entirely sure what happened after that because the feed cut out, but it looks like the man lost his mind and dismantled my ring cam. Fortunately, the other cameras he didn't know I had installed show him doing exactly that. Good thing I have a lawyer. Fourth update 1.5 weeks later. This is gonna be long because I am so goddamn livid. TL, DR, Mike is making breaking up utter hell and stole my dog, and now I've had to move for my and my dog's safety. A single day after my last post, I was packing up for an impromptu trip Aria was taking me on, partly to help me relax and partly to get me the hell out of that damn house so my father, brother, and ex wouldn't know where I was. So, I took Booger to the groomers. We planned to be away for a while, and she was due anyway. I thought I was being a responsible dog mom. But I was an idiot because, so frazzled by everything else, I completely forgot to tell them that Mike isn't permitted to pick her up anymore. I ran errands while Booger got her spa treatments, and when I returned, I was told by the front desk that your husband picked her up. I swear to you, my voice just stopped existing. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just crumpled to the ground and sobbed. He knew the groomer, knew the staff, he would sometimes pick her up for me back when we were together, and I didn't protect my baby by preempting this. How could I have been so damn stupid? His life mission is getting rid of her. It should have been one of the first things I did. I removed him everywhere else, and I don't know how I missed this. The staff came around the desk to help me to a chair, and I just wailed. I think I managed to say enough. The police were called, and I could barely speak even to them. They asked if there was someone I could call, like any family, and I cried harder. I have no one. If anything, my father and maybe my brother would help Mike do this. I managed to think clearly enough to call Aria, and she was on her way. But then I looked at my phone. He had texted me. That piece of crap actually texted me. Starting with "Hi baby," as if everything that happened up to now was absolutely non-existent. He said not to worry, that he is Booger, as he picked her up for you. He then added he was cooking us dinner at his place and that I could pick her up after dinner. He ended it with, "Love you," kissing emoji. It was so unfreaking believable, I could only just show the cops. One of them asked if they could look through my chat history, and I said yes, unlocked everything, and handed over the phone. I had forgotten all the abusive, manipulative, awful things that idiot had texted me until the cop pulled a colleague aside and showed him the screen a few times. I saw the officer glance back at me a couple of times, and then he left the building. When he returned, he asked if I had called the police about Mike before, and I said yes. He went through all the times I'd called, and I confirmed each one and recounted some of it verbally. Aria arrived and gave her own account of the situation, emphasizing that we had done everything we were supposed to by notifying them about this and that we'd been told they wouldn't help. She added that if Booger is hurt, she'll raise an unholy inferno over their useless department. Aria started to take charge, filling in for me when I couldn't, and asked what the police planned to do. They needed paperwork. Booger's records are all in my name, and the groomer is connected to the vet who handled Booger's adoption and intake paperwork, which proved I am her sole legal owner. The police went to Mike's home to get Booger, and from what I understand, since I wasn't there and only heard the official story, Mike let them in, showed them the dinner he'd made, and seemed confused, acting as though he didn't understand why the police were involved. He portrayed it as though we'd had a bad spat but were working things out, claiming I was mentally unstable, heavily medicated, and had asked him to pick up Booger after telling him about the grooming appointment. When they asked where Booger was, he said he no longer had her, claiming that family had picked her up so we could have a private, intimate night to make up and work on our relationship. I was at home waiting when another cop came by to ask about my mental health and whether I was a danger to myself or anyone, because Mike claimed he was concerned that I was unpredictable and abusive. Once again, I showed the text and footage showing the polar opposite, and once again, I explained that everything I was showing him, and more, had already been turned over to the police. By now, I had reached my lawyer, who advised that I answer only questions directly related to this specific situation, getting my dog back, and nothing more. So, I kept quiet and simply provided the necessary information. They found Booger at Blair's, but now Blair had his own story, that I was mentally unstable and unable to care for her, so I had asked him to take Booger to a shelter since I didn't have the heart to do it myself. He couldn't provide any proof, so they took Booger with them and brought her home. Booger came to me immediately, straining against the leash to reach me, and I cried on my front step, apologizing to her as if she understood everything that had just happened. But she was happy and excited, probably loved riding in a cop cruiser. She was just thrilled to be alive, as usual. The policewoman who handed me her leash provided information on where to get the paperwork about today's events and said she couldn't offer legal advice but to make sure to lock everything up tonight and call if anything happened. I did take Booger to the vet, and the tests that have come back show she is perfectly fine. I've now packed up most of my house, and everything that isn't in storage has been moved to Aria's. I'm working on getting the place ready to sell. I can't even imagine going back to that damn house. Mike left me a voicemail lamenting that I sicked the police on him when all he ever tried to do was love me. He said he's been so patient with my mental illness and obsession with my mutt, but now he's realizing my father was right. I don't deserve him, and I will never find anyone like him who will love me because I don't deserve love. And when I realize what I've lost, all due to my self-centered attitude, I'd better hope he hasn't moved on. But he's there if I ever decide to grow up, be a real woman, and try to fix things with him, although he's not going to wait around forever. An emergency protective order was pushed through, thanks to my lawyer, against both Mike and Blair. Blair was stupid enough to blow up my phone after the police took Booger, berating me. I didn't even listen, just forwarded everything to my lawyer, but apparently it was more than enough. My father lost it, I'm told, but I wouldn't know. He doesn't know where I am and has no way to reach me now. Mike is trying to pull a reverse, claiming that I was the abuser and that's why he fled to his place. He's also insisting I asked him to take Booger, with Blair backing him up. But my lawyer says not to worry because no one is taking his claims seriously, given the overwhelming documentation we have of their harassment. I've been at Arya's, and we're heading out on the trip tomorrow. Booger is a road dog and loves car rides, so I know she'll be very excited. The city we're going to is incredibly dog-friendly, so she'll be with us every step of the way. I'm not letting her out of my sight. Arya helped me go through everything to make sure Mike is now removed from all areas of my life. All of Booger's appointments, my medical records, package sign-offs, everything. All mail and packages are being rerouted to Arya's, and Mike doesn't know her address. She also has a rental property she uses as an Airbnb, and once the current tenants leave, she's setting me up to stay there until I find a new job out of town and move. I'm just so glad to have her with me right now because I haven't been able to sleep. I can barely even be around food, let alone eat it. Booger was gone for maybe a total of 5 hours, but I swear it felt like a lifetime. I've set up virtual appointments with my counseling team and might need something to help me sleep. But last night, Booger hopped up into bed with me, plopped down, and snuggled right beside me. I think she knows I'm stressed, and the only clear cure is cuddles. She's not entirely wrong. My mind is racing because, what would have happened if I didn't already have a lawyer pushing for my dog's return, or Arya there to speak up for me when I was a useless blob on the floor, crying and accomplishing absolutely nothing. I feel like a failure because, when it was time to act, all I did was cry like a child. Booger deserves better than me. What if he decided to just get rid of her or, worse, harm her? What was his whole plan? And why the hell would Blair help him? I know he hates me, but Jesus Christ. All I know for now is that I'm no contact with all three of them, and by the time my protective order is up for review next month, new job or not, I'll have yanked every root I placed here and get the hell out. 5th update 4 days later. I tried to edit this into my last post, but it kept giving me an error, and I'm too upset and frazzled to figure out why. Mike, Blair, and Dad have stepped it up. In the past 3 days alone, this is what's happened. My father has posted in multiple groups across several social media platforms, sharing a photo of me and asking if anyone has seen me, claiming I've gone missing. He's publicly shared my medical information related to my mental health, stretching the truth so hard I'm surprised he didn't pull a muscle. In his narrative, I'm off my meds, acting irrationally, and have now gone missing after attacking my brother. My lawyer has advised me not to worry and says she'll have the police handle it, as he's violating his restraining order by doing this. I've been getting calls and texts from multiple numbers, and the messages are mostly the same. I don't deserve love, that when I was essayed, it was my fault or made up because who would want me. They say I need to take what I can get, that I'm embarrassing, insane, unstable, and need medications. The insults just go on and on. I know one of them is either my dad or someone sent by him, because his favorite insult, "You're a waste of space and time," came up more than once. He used to say that to me when I was growing up if I didn't do what he said or try to change my look in any way. I would cry, and then he would hit me and tell me that my mother was resilient, and why can't I be? He'd call me weak and tell me crying is abusive to him because I was trying to emotionally manipulate him. He hurled it at me when he slapped me for coming out as bisexual, and I ended up apologizing to him for his emotional distress because he said he couldn't believe my mother died to give me life just for me to waste it. Sorry, that was a vent. My family on my dad's side has also been coming out of the woodwork to harass me and tell me how bad of a girlfriend, sister, or daughter I am. Some have been fed distorted renditions of what actually happened. Blair told a cousin that I abused Booger and he tried to take her to keep her safe. My cousin didn't believe him because she knows Blair and Dad and how they treated me. She called me only to tell me what was happening, and she also sent me an email to forward to my lawyer. Yesterday I got another text telling me to end myself. I guess that was the breaking point for me because I was gasping for air, trying to keep myself upright, and Arya sat me down and got me my anxiety medication to calm me down. It's unrelenting. I almost spiraled back into self-harm. Arya kept me company and we went to every stop on her itinerary for the day. I was able to breathe after a while. Between her and Booger, I was in good company. I go back to therapy tomorrow morning. I swear I am going to put my therapist on the Fortune 500 list with this laundry list of issues. Blair isn't permitted to talk to me, and neither is Mike or my father. But I keep worrying they will pop up somewhere. It's hard to even think this is all over an 8-year-old cuddlebug who literally doesn't have a bad bone in her wiggly body. Blair has never been this bad before, and it's not that long ago I thought Mike loved me and would never hurt me. I feel like I am going as crazy as they are trying to make me out to be. I have no idea how to even go into work tomorrow like nothing happened. I already emailed our HR rep about the situation in case they try to pull some sort of stunt. I'm paranoid and keep looking around expecting them to be right behind me. All I can do is keep cuddling Booger and hold fast to Arya and her partner, who have been a godsend. Good thing I didn't figure out how to add this to my last post, because now that it's written out, it's longer than I expected. Sorry.